Yuktahara viharasya yuktacheshtasya karmasu yuktasvapnavabodhasya yogo bhavati dukkhaha. This verse from the Bhagavad Gita tells us that for the one who is balanced in his diet, balanced in recreation, balanced in the effort that he puts forth in action, and balanced in sleep and wakefulness, for him, yoga becomes the destroyer of all suffering. So, with this prayer, we begin this session on Dinacharya or the daily routine. So, namaste and welcome to this session. Everything in nature has a routine. The sun rises at a particular time, it has a time to set. The seasons follow each other in a particular sequence. So, we as humans also need a routine to remain healthy, to remain in sync with nature. And Ayurveda prescribes a daily routine which is called the Dinacharya to remain healthy. So, let us look at what that is. So, just like everything in nature changes with the day and night, we must also remain in sync with nature to remain healthy. So, first thing is when we get up in the morning. So, what time should we get up? We all think of the number of hours of sleep, but really it is important what time we wake up. And Brahma Muhurat is the time which begins 96 minutes before sunrise. And Ayurveda prescribes that we must wake up during this time. So, most successful people wake up early in the morning. They get this extra 2 to 3 hours when they wake up early. But it is not just about the extra time. What is so special about this time? So, if we see, we have a biological clock. That is, the energy in our body shifts from one organ to the other according to the time of the day. And this is related to the sun. So, before sunrise, around 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., is the time for the energy in the large intestine. So, if you wake up early before sunrise, the energy is concentrated in the large intestine and therefore it functions well. So, if you wake up early, the bowels will clear easily and you can easily get rid of constipation. If you wake up later than that, the energy shifts into the stomach and then into the spleen and then into the heart. And so, by just changing the time you wake up, you can actually facilitate or hamper the clearing of the intestines. Then there is a circadian rhythm of the serum cortisol level. Cortisol is the steroid hormone which is naturally present in our blood, and there is a circadian rhythm, that is, there is a diurnal variation, a variation with day and night in the level of this hormone. So if you see here, this is the graph, and the level begins to rise around the Brahma Muhurat, which is around 4:30 a.m. And then it peaks at around 8 a.m. And so if you've ever been prescribed steroid pills for some reason, the doctor will tell you to take them at around 8 a.m. after breakfast, because that is the time for the natural peak. And this way we prevent suppression of the normal body secretion if we take the pill at around this time. And then the level starts to decline, and around sunset the levels become quite low, and beyond sunset they become negligible. So it's important that we take advantage of this slope here. As we know that the steroid is the stress fighting hormone of the body. So if we have adequate level of steroid in the body, our body is able to fight stress. And so if we wake up early, we get this advantage. So any activity in the body is a stress to the body, be it physical activity or mental activity. So any activity that is performed in the early hours of the morning puts less stress on the body. After waking up, we must drink water. So how much water should we drink? The differences of opinions, if you look up Google, it might tell you 2 liters, 4 liters, etc., etc. But Ayurveda says that the amount of water that should be had is 8 anjalis. So, what is anjali? Anjali is a measure, that is, when you cup both hands like this, the water that can be accommodated in between the hands, or anything that can be accommodated in between the two palms, is called 1 anjali. So 8 such, that is the amount of water that should be had by an individual after waking up in the morning. And this is called Usha Pan. Usha means dawn and Pan means to drink. So the water that is had early in the morning before sunrise is called Usha Pan. And the size of the Anjali obviously will vary according to the individual. So you can measure how much is 8 Anjalis, and then you can drink that amount of water every day in the morning. So what is the advantage of this, of drinking water at this time? It helps to prevent constipation. As we already discussed, morning is the colon time according to the biological clock. So if you wake up early in the morning and then if you have water, it actually stimulates the gastrocolic reflex. So this reflex is a neurological reflex, that is, when we drink water, it distends our abdomen, it distends the stomach, and that sets off a neurological impulse which stimulates the contraction or the peristalsis of the colon, and it helps defecation. So this helps to prevent constipation, and it also has a rejuvenative effect. So rasayan is the term used in Ayurveda to imply anything that causes rejuvenation or gives vitality. So drinking water early in the morning on an empty stomach actually has a rejuvenative effect on the body. Some research has been done to see how this works, and they have seen that if you have cold water, it takes about 6 hours to digest. Now you'll be surprised to hear that even water needs to be digested. So in this experiment, they saw that it took 6 hours for the body to process cold water. So if you drink water, it will take 6 hours to get absorbed from the intestines into the circulation, go to the kidneys, get filtered, and come out as urine. And if you have water that has been boiled and then cooled to room temperature, it takes about 3 hours for the body to process it. So from the time you drink it to the time it exits from your body in the form of urine, it takes about 3 hours. And if you drink warm water, it will go through the body in 1.5 hours. So this means that cold water is heavier to process and warm water is processed easily by the body. Especially if you have constipation, then warm water is the better thing to have. And also, if you want to lose weight, warm water helps you lose weight. If you have an excellent digestion and your weight is less, you don't want to lose any more weight, or if you have too much pitta, then you would have room temperature water. After drinking water, what do? Before you do the next thing, it's important to know that water intake should be restricted in certain conditions. So what are those conditions? Fever, chronic skin diseases, eye diseases, poor digestive fire, anorexia, when you have a running nose, that is, you have a cold, excessive salivation, which is again usually a prodromal symptom to developing a fever. So before you develop a fever, there's often the symptom of excessive salivation. You have a lot of salivary secretion. And in fact, all these conditions listed so far are conditions of poor digestive fire and So, and also in debility, when the body is weak, when you have a wound, in diabetes, or when there is water retention in the body. In all these conditions, the water intake should be restricted. So instead of drinking 8 anjalis, you would drink less. Since all these conditions are conditions of and they signify a reduced digestive fire, drinking excessive amounts of water will actually be counterproductive because it will put out the fire and lead to more production. Now, in case of diabetes, there is increase in thirst and there is increase in urination. So, if you curtail the amount of water intake, you might get dehydrated. So, what should be done in these conditions? In these conditions, the increase in thirst is actually an indicator of or toxins. So, increase in thirst is often a symptom of just like when you eat something heavy, which is which has a lot of oil or it's very dense, you feel very thirsty after that because the body creates and so thirst, excessive thirst is a manifestation of So in such conditions, you want to decrease the abnormally increased thirst. So we will use herbs like coriander seed powder, like dry ginger powder. So we can boil these and make a decoction and drink that to reduce the excessive thirst and also to digest that because these herbs will actually improve the digestive fire and help to detoxify, help to clear the So in such conditions, we must take these herbs and so that the thirst which is abnormally high can be reduced and we can prevent the dampening of the agni which happens because of excessive intake of water. This verse says ajirne bheshajam vari jirne vari balapradam bhojane chamritam vari bhojanante vishapaham. It talks about the qualities of water. That is, water is medicine during indigestion. So when you have indigestion, you should fast and instead just have warm water. So water will help to digest that especially warm water or medicated water. Water is nourishing post digestion. So after you have digested the digested the food, about say 1.5 hours after a meal, you must drink water, and that actually gives strength to the body. It nourishes the body. Similarly, water had during a meal, so in between a meal, when you've finished half the meal, so in the middle of the meal, if you drink some water, of course, you must remember the proportion that we already discussed. So a quarter of the stomach is to be filled with liquid, 2/4 to be filled with solid food, and 1/4 should be left empty for the movement of food. So water had in the middle of a meal is nectar because it helps to emulsify the food and aids in digestion. And water that is had post meal immediately is akin to poison. So we must refrain from having water after a meal. After drinking water, we go to the toilet. And how do you sit on the toilet? So we often sit like this, just like we're sitting on a chair with a slight incline, and sometimes we sit very straight, thinking that's better. But actually, this is a very unhealthy position. So, as you see here, there is a muscle which is called the puborectalis muscle. It acts like a sling. So it attaches here in the front to the pubic bone and goes around the rectum. And so it acts like a sling. And when we're seated straight, the sling is tight. And so it prevents the evacuation of the bowels. But if you sit at an angle like this, which is a squatting position, which is actually a very normal position in many cultures, so you see that the sling is released and the natural process can happen effortlessly. Now, since our toilets are not designed in this way, then you can use a stool underneath your feet, and this creates that 35-degree angle. So especially if you have problems in the knees, then you could sit in this position with a stool underneath your feet. So after going to the toilet, Malasana is the correct posture in which we must go to the toilet, and that is the squatting pose. After going to the toilet, we must brush our teeth, and we all know that it's good for oral hygiene. Ayurveda prescribes twigs of medicinal or herbal trees for brushing the teeth. So you chew on the twig until it forms a brush at the end, and then you clean the teeth with that. So some examples of twigs that are used are from the trees of neem, babool, karanj, and vatajada, that is the aerial roots of the banyan tree. You may or may not have access to these, but the most important point that I want to make here is that the taste of the herbs or the substance that is used to clean the teeth must always be bitter, pungent, or astringent. It should never be sweet. And most toothpaste that we use today have a sweet taste. Not only that, but they are laden with harmful chemicals. So instead, if we get a herbal powder, so we can brush our teeth with that. If we don't have access to the fresh twigs of these plants, we always have access to herbal tooth powder, and we can clean the teeth with that. So it's important that the herb or the tooth powder that we use is bitter, pungent, or astringent, because sweet taste will actually lead to an increase in kapha, and it reduces the very purpose of cleaning the teeth. There are contraindications to brushing the teeth with the twigs. That is, when there is indigestion, when there's cough, breathlessness, vomiting, fever, facial paralysis, that is in the acute phase, oral ulcers, and acute heart conditions. So, in all these conditions, we do not want to aggravate vata. When you brush the teeth, sometimes you can have a gag reflex, and because of this reflex, there could be vomiting, and which will increase vata in the system. So, therefore, in these conditions, brushing should be avoided, and oral hygiene can be maintained by just gargling or minimal brushing. After this, we must scrape the tongue. So such tongue scrapers are available, and they're made of metal, usually steel or copper. So what is the purpose of tongue scraping? Tongue scraping is called jibba nirlekhan. Jibba is tongue and nirlekhan is to scrape. So as you see here, this is the tongue, and various organs are represented on the tongue. So we have marma points. We'll be talking about marma points in another session. So just like you have the acupressure points in Chinese medicine, you have marma points. So you see that different organs are represented at different places on the tongue. And so by scraping the tongue from the back to the front, you are actually stimulating all these points and stimulating the function of these internal organs. And when you wake up, there's usually some coating on the tongue, which is arm. Like we saw in the images in the colonoscopy, there is arm coating the colon. In the same way, the tongue actually is the beginning of our digestive tract. And so it is a mirror of what is happening within. So there is usually a slight coating, and once we scrape the tongue, that coating is cleared, and then we must inspect the tongue. So the tongue tells us a lot about what is happening inside. Often people have marks like these. So these are teeth marks, indentations caused by the teeth, and these represent poor absorption of nutrients in the intestine. So if you see these, means you have poor absorption, and you'll invariably have a low level of vitamin B12 in the blood. Sometimes there's thick coating like this, which will not go even after scraping the tongue. This means that there is arm, and depending on where this coating is localized, we can know where the deposition of arm is in the internal organs. Sometimes this coating will be localized to the back of the tongue here, which means that it corresponds to the arm in the intestines, and so on. Now, even the color of the coating can give us a lot of information about the imbalance. So, a thick, white, cheesy coating is found in kapha excess when there is arm with kapha. If the coating is yellowish or greenish, it means that there is pitta. And if the coating has a brownish or blackish tinge, it means that there is vata. Similarly, you could see cracks on the tongue, and cracks means that there is a lot of bath. So if you look at the earth in summer, when there is a lot of dryness, you see that the earth has cracks. So because of the dryness, it cracks up. In the same way, when we have a lot of bath in the system, it kind of cracks up our system, and that can be seen on the tongue. So this means that there is a lot of degeneration inside the body as well. Then sometimes you can see raw areas, ulcers, as you see here. There could be loss of the papillae or redness, ulcerations, and this means that there is a lot of pitta or a lot of heat in the system. So the tongue gives us a lot of information about what is happening within our bodies. And this habit of tongue scraping will clear the arm, will stimulate the internal organs, and it gives us an opportunity to see what is happening within our body. It's important to remember that we must do this only in the morning when we wake up after brushing our teeth. We must not do this at night because we don't want the internal machinery to be in an overactive state at night. So at night, we just brush our teeth for oral hygiene, but it's not good to stimulate all the internal organs and do this tongue scraping at night. After this, we do oil pulling, that is gandush. So we take about a teaspoon or two of cold pressed oil, whatever is naturally available in your area. The best is cold pressed sesame oil. You could also use coconut oil or any oil for that matter, which is edible. So you take a teaspoon or two of oil and swish it around in your mouth like you use a mouthwash. And do this for about 10 minutes. So you keep the oil in the mouth, in the oral cavity, swish it around for about 10 minutes, and the saliva will accumulate. And so you need to take just a teaspoon or two. If you take more than that, the saliva accumulates and you will not be able to hold it for 2 minutes. And after you do that, then you spit it out and rinse your mouth. You can also massage your gums lightly, and it's important not to gargle with this. So you don't go like that, but you just swish it around in the oral cavity and then you spit it out. So this draws all the toxins from the oral cavity into the oil, and which is spit out. So what are the advantages of oil pulling? First, it increases the blood supply in the oral cavity and it benefits oral health. So if you have gingivitis, you have bleeding gums or foul smell from the mouth, it benefits all these conditions. It's good for the teeth, it strengthens the teeth and the gums. It detoxifies the body because the toxins are drawn out from the body and they come into the oil, which is later spit out. And it strengthens the sense organs. So it strengthens the vision, the hearing, the sense of smell, and the sense of taste. So as we discussed earlier, oiling is very important for the body. So this is how we oil the oral cavity. And so it helps to reduce bath, especially in the head and neck region. So very good if you have stress, very good if you have sleep disturbance, very good if you have memory loss and so on. So it's extremely good for the head and neck region, for the brain and the sense organs. And you'll be surprised that it'll help you relieve constipation. So the oral cavity is the beginning of our digestive tract, and by doing oil pulling on a regular basis, you can actually get relieved of constipation. After oil pulling, we do oil massage, which is called abhyanga. And oil massage strengthens the body and sense organs, and it prevents wear and tear. Of course, it imparts softness to the skin. And oil, because it is lubricating, it reduces bath. So, as we know, bath is the element that actually causes destruction in the body when it is in excess, and it is responsible for degeneration and aging. So, by reducing Vata in the body, it abhyanga or oil massage has an anti-aging property. And whether you know them or not, you will stimulate the various marma points in the body. And therefore, the internal organs which are related to those marma points get stimulated and energized. We'll have an entire session on marma points, and you can understand this better. And because the vata is reduced, the marma points are stimulated. So, massage promotes good sleep. And we know that sleep is essential for rejuvenation. There's some contraindications to massage, and they are all conditions where there is harm in the body. Because the oil that is applied to the skin has to be digested by the body. So, as we discussed earlier, there is pitta, the bhrajak pit, which is present in the skin, which actually digests that oil. So, if there is poor agni, poor fire, and there is arm, massage can actually increase the amount of arm in the body. So, in conditions of arm, such as fever, or when there is obesity, cough and cold, during the menstrual period, and conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, we must not do an oil massage. Instead, we can do a dry massage, which is called Udvartan. So, Udvartan is basically a dry massage. You can do either with a towel, or you can use herbal powders, and also in kapha excess, this is preferred. Because if you do an oil massage in a condition of arm, the arm will increase, and actually you start feeling more aches and pains, and you may even develop a fever. So these are the contraindications of oil massage. After doing an oil massage, okay, before going to the next thing, now 3 parts of the body are very important for massage. If you cannot massage the entire body, Ayurveda says that if you massage 3 parts of the body, then it gives you a lot of benefit. And those 3 parts are the head, the ears, and the feet. As you see here, there are many marma points in the feet. So there are a lot of points in the head and neck region, in the feet, and on the ear. And therefore, massaging these 3 parts of the body when it is not convenient to massage the entire body can give you a lot of benefit. After massaging, we do exercise. So it's important to massage before exercise, especially if you have a lot of vata, because exercise causes an increase in vata, causes dryness. So it's important to counteract that by a massage. If you have an excess of kapha in the body, then you can do the exercise first and then do the massage. So exercise or vyayam, as it is called in Sanskrit or Ayurveda, is important for the body because it helps to increase our agni. So here on the x-axis we have the amount of exercise, and on the y-axis we have the benefit. So we discussed earlier that as you increase the amount of exercise, the benefit increases to a maximum point, because the agni or the fire is increasing, and it helps to detoxify the body by digesting the arm. But if you go on exercising beyond that point, then the benefit reduces, and after a certain point it can actually become harmful. So what is this point of maximum benefit? It is the point when we start sweating in the armpits and on the forehead and get out of breath. So we must stop exercising then, and slowly over a period of time we can build up our exercise tolerance, and then we will be able to exercise much more. After you exercise, you have a bath, but it's important for the body to cool down and not bathe immediately after exercise. And actually, it's good to rub in the sweat. So you can just massage in the sweat because there is ojas in that and you don't want to lose it. So you must wait for the body to absorb that back and for the body to cool down and then go for a bath. So bath is important for hygiene definitely, but it does much more than that. It has an impact on our physical and mental health. So you would have experienced that after you have a bath, you feel hungry. And that's because a bath stimulates the digestive fire, especially if you have a bath, a cold bath, that is with water at room temperature. It draws the fire or the heat inside and actually kindles the digestive fire. So that's how it stimulates the digestive secretions, which aids digestion. So it's good to have a bath before a meal. But if you do the reverse, that is, you eat and then have a bath, it puts out the fire. So that's not a good idea. And after the bath, not only do you feel hungry, but also you feel very energized. You feel fresh and you feel good mentally. So that's the mental impact that it has. For those people who have a lot of bath, they should use warm water because cold water can aggravate bath. But it's important to remember to avoid very hot temperatures for the head and neck region. So if you use very hot water above the collarbone, that is in the head and neck region, it can actually cause early graying of the hair, it can cause hair fall, it can cause poor eyesight. So we must not use very hot water for the head and neck region. And there are contraindications to a bath. So during fever, we must not bathe. Also during menstruation, we'll be doing an entire session on menstruation, on the care that needs to be taken. And so definitely hygiene is important, but prolonged bath or showers should be avoided. Similarly, in cases, situations of like in diarrhea, indigestion, or when you have a cold, it's good to avoid bathing, especially a cold shower. And also, we must not bathe immediately after food. After bathing, we do nasya. So, nasya is the instillation of medicated oil or ghee, or even plain oil or ghee into the nose. So, Ayurveda says Nasa Shirodwaram, that is, the nose is the doorway to the brain. Now, if you were to ingest a herb orally, it will go into the stomach, then into the intestines, it will be digested, absorbed into the circulation, then it goes to the liver where it is metabolized, and then whatever is left of that goes back into the circulation. Then it goes to the brain where it has to cross the blood-brain barrier, which is made of the meninges and blood vessels, and then it enters the brain. So it encounters all these various obstacles. So you have to have a good digestion, and it should be processed by the liver, and then it should go in through the blood-brain barrier. Whereas if you administer the drug or the herb into the nose, it gets absorbed directly into the brain because the endings of the olfactory nerve, which is the first cranial nerve, are present in the roof of the nose. And so the herb is absorbed through those nerve endings directly into the brain. And therefore, this route is very good for the head and neck area. So it benefits the sense organs. So as we discussed about the pranavayu, which is present in the brain, so if there is excessive pranavayu, imbalance in pranavayu, it causes a drying effect on the brain. So there is tarpak kaph, which is present in the brain, in the head and neck region, and that dries out. So that creates an imbalance of neurotransmitters in the brain, which can lead to psychological disturbances manifesting as insomnia or depression, mania, etc. So by providing this lubrication, we are balancing the pranavayu and the tarpak kaph, and the sadhak pith, which is present in the brain. So it also benefits the sense organs. So extremely good for the sense of smell, for our eyesight, for our hearing, and for the brain. It enhances memory and sleep and is used to treat conditions like depression, hair loss, nasal allergies. It increases facial luster and it also prevents the entry of pathogens through the nose. So, in the current pandemic situation, if we use oil in the nose, it will help to prevent the entry of the virus. Also, there are herbal oils that can be used, like anu tail, shadbindu tail, which can be used, which are very good for nasal allergies and also pathogens. Otherwise, plain oil like sesame oil can be used, or if a person has a pitta prakriti, then ghee is excellent for the brain. It also pacifies pitta. So, for people with pitta, we prefer to use ghee, plain ghee, or herbal ghee. And for people who have vat or kapha, we use oils. Then the contraindication to anasya would be again conditions of arm. So in the monsoon, when there is a lot of humidity, often the agni is low and there could be arm. So we avoid doing nasya in that season. Also, when there is an infection in the ENT area, that is the ear, nose, and throat region, which means that there is arm, we avoid doing nasya. So nasya should be done after a bath on an empty stomach because after we eat, uh, there tends to be some level of arm in the body, and then that could actually doing nasya after a meal could cause a cold or a blocked nose. So nasya should always be done on an empty stomach, and we must wait for at least 20 to 30 minutes after nasya before we can eat food. Then after doing nasya, we do karnapuran, which is installation of oil in the ears. So it's important to oil all the orifices of the body. So we've put oil, we've done oil pulling in the mouth, then the nose, and now the ears. So this strengthens the auditory system and maintains the sense of hearing, and it also maintains the softness of the wax in the ear so that you don't get impacted wax, and prevents bacterial overgrowth in the ears, and it helps in proper conduction of the sound. So it keeps the tympanic membrane, the eardrum, very supple, and also the bones inside. So because they vibrate along with the sound waves, and so it helps in proper conduction of sound. So we are reducing the vata in the ear, and this prevents tinnitus, vertigo, and facial paralysis. Again, there are contraindications to Karnapuran as with the uses of oil anywhere in the body. When there is so when you have a fever or when there is any of those conditions of this is to be avoided. Also, if there's a perforation in the eardrum, then we must not do Karnapuran. Or if there has been a surgery in the ear, then we avoid Karnapuran. So, as we discussed earlier, we have a biological clock, that is, the body functions uh, change or are regulated by the sun. So, depending on the day of the sun, so the beginning of the day is predominated by kapha. And as we know, kapha is to do with the static energy of the body. And so, physical activities will mobilize kapha. And it's best to do the physical activities in the morning, in the kapha time, because they will help mobilize the kapha. And also, this is the time where the ambient temperature is not so hot. So, our bodies can handle the physical activity better at this time. The middle of the day, that is when the sun is the brightest, is the pitta time, and that's the time when we must have our heaviest meal, and it gets digested well when we have it at that time because the enzymatic activity in the gut is at its best. The evening time, 2 to 6 p.m., is the Vata time, and Vata is to do with movement. So, all creative activity, where we use our creation, imagination, is better to do at that time. And also foods that aggravate Vata should be definitely be avoided in the evening time. And it's good to have an early dinner around sunset so that there's adequate time for the food to be digested, because we want the digestion to be complete before the liver actually begins its activity. So according to the biological clock, the liver is most active around 2 a.m. And if it is not busy digesting food, it will be able to detoxify the body, because detoxification is the other important function of the liver. And so early dinner and going to bed early is important. And before you go to bed, it's a good practice to put oil in the belly button. And this is called Nabhi Puran. Nabhi is the belly button or the navel, and Puran is to fill. So, putting a few drops of oil in the belly button is good. If you have Vata or Kapha, it's good to use oil. But if you have Pitta, then it's good to use ghee or coconut oil. So, what does this oil do in the belly button? As a fetus, when we are in the uterus of our mother, we are connected to the placenta by the umbilical cord, which attaches here at the navel. So the blood connection is through this. And after birth, when the umbilical cord is cut, some of these blood channels remain patent, which connect from the navel to the liver. And so, by instilling various herbs or oils into the belly button, these substances get absorbed into the gut and into the liver. And in fact, Nabhi, or as it is called, the belly button, is a very important murmur point. And so, injury to the Nabhi or the navel can be fatal, because at this point there is no muscle, and the Nabhi or the navel communicates directly with the peritoneal cavity. So, there's a very thin layer of fascia or connective tissue, and there are no muscles in this area. So if there's an injury, it can easily lead to peritonitis or infection in the peritoneal cavity. So when we instill this oil or ghee or herbal oil into the belly button, this gets absorbed and it helps digestion. It strengthens our digestive fire. If you have constipation, then you can instill castor oil. Also, you can mix some asafoetida, which will help the movement of the vata in the belly in the downward direction. So that aids the samanvayu and the apanvayu. Similarly, if you have acne in the skin, on the face, you can put neem oil, which will help clear the acne. In small babies, when they have colic, so infantile colic, a very common home remedy is to dissolve some asafoetida in water and apply it on the belly button and on the entire belly, and that helps to release the excessive gas and relieve the colic. So putting oil in the belly button before going to bed is a very good practice. And then we must go to bed early. Now, children can sleep very easily. We see children sleep for long hours and it's easy for them to fall asleep. But as we age, sleep can become a problem. And sleep is very important for the body because it has a rejuvenative effect. So if we are sleep deprived, then that increases vata in the system. And vata, we know, is degenerative. And so this has both a cause and effect relationship. So if there is excessive vata in the body, it will lead to poor sleep or a sleep disturbance or a lack of sleep or insomnia. Similarly, if you purposefully stay up late at night, so you're sleep deprived, that will lead to an increase in vata in the system, which again has a degenerative effect on the body. So it is a vice versa relationship, that is, it is both cause and effect. An increase in vata decreases sleep, and if you're sleep deprived, it increases vata in the system. So it's important to go to bed early because, as we discussed in the slide on the serum level of cortisol, the steroid hormone. So just like it was important to wake up early, so early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. So we discussed about early to rise. And here again, if you see the graph, the level of the hormone becomes very negligible after sunset. And if you stay up late at night after 10 p.m., then the body has to pump in extra steroid to deal with that stress. Because staying up late at night is a stress for the body. And so the body pumps in extra steroid, and that will manifest as side effects of steroid, just the same as when you take in steroid pills. So there will be poor bone density with osteoporosis, there'll be osteoarthritis, there'll be excessive weight gain, there could be high blood pressure, high blood sugar, diabetes, poor immunity, allergies, and so on. So if you stay up late at night, there is increase in vata. There are all these effects that you encounter when you take exogenous steroid. So you're making the body pump in extra steroid and weakening the body. And another practice which is beneficial before going to bed is a foot massage, especially if you have problem falling asleep. So if you do an oil massage, you massage the feet before going to bed, it stimulates all the marma points and it facilitates deep rejuvenative sleep. And you could fall asleep doing the yoga nidra, an extremely good practice. So you lie down in the supine position in shavasana and do your practice of yoga nidra, and then slowly turn into the left lateral position, that is with your left shoulder below and the right shoulder higher on your left side, and go to bed in that position. And the head should be in the south, either in the south or in the east. The head should never be placed in the north when you go to sleep because of the polarity of the earth. If the head is placed in the north, then it leads to a disturbance in the magnetic field, and which creates high blood pressure and also mental disturbances. So in India, it's a tradition that the dead body or the corpse is placed with the head in the north. So while we're living, we never put our head in the north, and so the head should always be in the south or the east. And then you slip into sleep, and because you have fallen into sleep doing the yoga nidra, you could also do your mantra, and that stays throughout the night, and that gives you a much deeper sleep. And because the sleep is deeper, it has a very powerful rejuvenative effect on the body. So it's not just the number of hours of sleep, but it's also the depth or the quality of sleep that's important. So if we can have a sleep that is deep and quiet, the body gets rejuvenated. And so this is how we conclude the day. And we begin the day with a prayer and conclude the day with a prayer with thanksgiving for all that we have received in our day and our life. And we conclude this session here with the prayer that may this practice be fruitful for us. May our lives be fruitful for us and for everyone on this planet. Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi.